Cloud. Okay, hello, beautiful humans. Welcome back to the Bitcoin Stoa. As a reminder, this is a fully community-funded project, so if you enjoy listening, you can support our work by sending some sats to the QR code on our website at bitcoinstoa.com, or you can stream or boost sats while you're listening through something like the Fountain app. And as a side note, you can actually earn sats by listening to podcasts on Fountain app, which is super dope and kind of still blows my mind. Current Moscow time is 41:38 at 7:47:093. And with that said, it's my honor to welcome Mike Hobart to the Stoa for a conversation about how fiat incentivizes disease and how Bitcoin can lead us into a future that incentivizes health. So, Mike, welcome to the Stoa.
Oh yeah, dude. Thank you for inviting me on. I don't know if I'm humble to a fault, or I'm trying to figure that out. I've been trying to figure that out for a long time, but like, I'm not trying to like force myself onto these podcasts. So like every time that you guys like ask me to come on, I'm honored, but I'm excited to riff with you for a while.
I mean, you seem like you know your shit. So, the reason I started the Stoa is like, I would be having these conversations anyway. If all I have to do is hit record and do a little bit of work to post it, and one other person on earth can benefit, that's a good thing. So,
Yeah,
why not? And
well, plus it gives you the capability to, like, if it was like a really good conversation like the one we're about to have, like you can just go back. Yeah, you can go back. Well, you can clip it. You can go back and like re-experience it like a viewer, and then just like figure out like where we failed or where we did well. There's just a lot of benefits.
I agree. The idea of archiving your perspective and then revisiting it a year later to see like how much have you, sometimes as you change your mind, it's so incremental that it seems like you're not really changing your mind. But I've listened to podcasts I recorded a couple of years ago for the Health Network. I'm like, shit, I've really changed my mind on that, but I wouldn't have really realized it. So I think you're right. I think it's serves a good purpose for that as well.
Yep.
So thanks for being here. Appreciate your time. Very excited to dive into this topic today and exchange perspectives. And maybe to give a bit of context, people listening, Cole's notes on July 5th, Mike posted a tweet that said, Keynesian economics is an attack on physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual health. And, I kind of work at the intersection of Bitcoin and health, saw that, and I was like, shit, that seems like something really interesting. And I commented and asked if you wanted to unpack it further on a podcast. And here we are. So thank you for making that tweet. Thank you for being here. And maybe a good place to start, which is an uncommon one, but I think it's extremely important, is like, let's have a chat about how we define health, because we're going to talk about health. We're going to talk about disease. Before we even start throwing those words out there, I think health is one of those words, kind of like Bitcoin, where like everyone has their own definition and meaning with the word health. And it'd probably be a good launch pad to just start by riffing on like, how do you define health? So what, when someone says health, or when you use the word health, when you're talking, how do you actually define that? What do you, run with that, see where it goes.
Well, that's a really densely packed question. So obviously there's going to be different nuances to basically every point of it. But if I am just talking about health in passing, personally, I'm referring to typically the physiological and the nutritional as far as health goes. But like you said, there is still very much like the spiritual side, there's the psychological side, and then there's also there's definitely the philosophical side to it. Like it's like kind of like a full spectrum kind of attack on it. But somebody that's healthy, in my opinion, as far as a definition would go, it would be in an individual that isn't experiencing significant conflict within like the dynamic of that full spectrum, like I just mentioned. Like somebody is healthy if they physically, if they aren't like disease ridden or ridden with complications that are like, because like now here's where we're getting into the nuance, is somebody that's
for the nuance. Fuck the boring, right? Superficial stuff. Let's dive in.
Psychologically healthy is going to be somebody that has found a way to live with their body that isn't causing them undue harm or difficulty, in my opinion. So somebody that has, say, type 1 diabetes, if they have a routine and a regimen and a diet that allows them to go about living their life without significant like friction, I think that I would argue that they're healthy because they have a condition that's technically classified as a disease, right? But it's not something that they can necessarily do anything about. Or at least that's how the health field classifies it now. There's always the possibility that down the road we find like there is actually a cure for it or something. Same goes for like cancers or other conditions or ailments like that. But somebody that isn't healthy, or somebody that is unhealthy, in my opinion, would be somebody that is complaining about depression or alcoholism or these other conditions, but they aren't taking the steps to try and alleviate those problems. And that's where, like, specifically nutrition and physical activity make strides on like progressing people away from those ailments. I think that's an answer to your question. I don't know for sure. So
I like it. I mean, you touched on a really big point that I like hold pretty close in terms of my core definition, which is that health is a process, not a destination. And this idea that we attach, like a snapshot of someone's state, we often like to label it as healthy or unhealthy, right? Like if you're overweight, you're unhealthy. If you're depressed, you're unhealthy.
Yeah, it's a misnomer.
Yeah, because it insinuates a fixed state, right? And it's like, really what matters and what you got to is what is the person doing about it? So what are they engaging with the process of health? Because you can be extremely overweight and still be engaging every day with the process of health. And I would consider that person healthy because they're taking action basically to achieve better health. And so I think my favorite definition that I've ever heard is health is the process of learning how to take better care of myself, because that doesn't actually,
man, I wish I would have said that.
I mean, I have a shitload. I've asked 1,000 people, literally, about our health network to get into our, like, it's like a private Facebook without all the garbage ads. It's free, but the only cost is you got to answer the question. And we have 1,600 people that have answered that question. So I just dive into, I think we all should have our own subjective definition of health, but there's probably some common threads. Yeah. I think one of the big ones that I see in those answers is the absence of disease, but part of me also feels that the absence of disease is kind of a low bar, right? Like not being diseased is not really the definition of health. I think like thriving and every day putting energy into taking care of yourself, something that I think is really relevant for Bitcoiners because they actually have the time to do that. Really matters, right? Bitcoin seems to have this ability to nudge us towards what matters. And I think health is like, is one of the big things that matters if you actually have these truthful values, right? Without health, like time is scarce, but without health, time is a burden. So it's like health is the key element to make time worthwhile and scarce and meaningful. So yeah.
And to that point too, is like if you're focusing more on trying to have pristine health, but you're not enjoying your life, like if you're like, because like there's a difference between somebody who enjoys being healthy and is just like very proud of that, but then there's somebody who is maybe farther away from the perfect health spectrum, but they are really enjoying their life. Like I would rather that individual that's relatively healthy but is enjoying like their life and their time more, as far as like maybe they're not making the perfect health decisions, but they're doing what they want. I mean, I would classify them as healthier than somebody who's trying to just live a perfectly pristine, healthy life. Like that almost sounds like a fake life to me. That's not like, I don't want to have perfect health for the sake of having perfect health. Like that doesn't necessarily make sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like an unhealthy pursuit of health. And what the fuck is perfect health, right? It's like, this idea that we have this holy grail. I think that's part of the misnomer of labeling healthy as this like state we're trying to get to, is like, it's this weird thought where once you get there, you don't have to do anything. And that's not true. Every day you have to engage with the process, right? It might be to a higher degree some days or to a lower degree other days. But I think living a pleasant life is part of health. And if you're sacrificing your happiness and miserable on your pursuit of health, I think that's unhealthy. But once again, it's like everyone has to have their own opinion, but I think airing that out is important. And it's almost like if you break down the word disease on the other end of the spectrum, it breaks down to dis-ease. So it's almost like health would be ease, right? The state of not being
Fluidity.
constantly challenged or struggling. That's kind of a good duo to kind of pair that up. But I think we have a lot of disease these days. I think we have on all the fronts that you mentioned, physical, psychological, emotional, environmental. I think, it's almost like we have capital B and lowercase b, Bitcoin, like Bitcoin, the network, and then Bitcoin, the asset. I like the idea of lowercase h health as in like individual health, and then capital health as in like individual, collective, environmental health. Like capital H health is really what matters. Health. Yeah, because if you disconnect the environment, the health of the environment from the health of the human, you never end up solving the problem, right? Like I read your article. You've written some amazing stuff for Bitcoin Magazine. This idea that we can talk about health without even starting with a conversation about soil health, which is like the foundation that all of individual health is built on, is kind of absurd, right? It's like very narrow-minded. So let's talk about disease for a sec. Because we're going to talk about how fiat incentivizes disease culture and essentially dismantles health, and how Bitcoin can possibly incentivize health culture. But what are your thoughts on the state of humanity within the context of health right now? Like, what do you see in your day-to-day life that would maybe reiterate the fact that we are in a disease-centric culture? We have a really big health problem. And then, I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
You want to talk about it from like a North American centric?
So if we talk about disease, how does that, let's give some concrete examples. Like if we say we live in a disease culture and we got a big problem with disease right now, let's make it concrete for people. So how do you see it? Like concrete examples of like the mental health problem, the physical health problem, the environmental health problem. Let's just talk about like what would indicate to us concretely that we are living in an era of disease right now, because someone who's listening to this might not actually think that's the truth. So how can we just provide a deeper explanation of our experience of why we think that?
Well, I don't know if it's the low hanging fruit, but the thread that kind of ties it all together is just radical ignorance and lack of accountability. On a market-wide spectrum, all the way down to the individual. So when it comes to like physical health, we can talk about alcohol and drug abuse. We can talk about the fact that 70% of the foods that are in grocery stores are processed and extremely dopaminergic, which what I mean by that is they're specifically relying on high carbohydrate and sodium content. Those are probably the big ones as far as like pharmaceutical, because then like,
you want to talk about drug abuse? Let's include sugar in that, because I think that's actually what it is.
Yeah. Well, you can include sugar, you can include salt. Technically, you can include caffeine. Those are the ones that nobody wants to talk about either, by the way, because it is technically drug abuse.
Yes.
It's just widely accepted, right?
It's normalized.
It's like the difference between alcohol consumption and marijuana. Like one of them's radically healthier than the other, and the other is actually largely still illegal. It's just asinine. But the ignorance that I was talking about, or that I was kind of touching on, would be ignorance and accountability. I'll touch on both of those, because large portions of the population, especially in the United States, and from what I've been reading, is much of Europe is becoming almost United States defied, I guess you could say.
I think Canada and Australia could be lumped in there too. It's like this it's like I think it's okay to generalize this into a Western culture, because I think largely it's true.
Yeah. And the populations it kind of started in the US, but now it's like spreading, almost infecting the rest of Western culture. Everybody's getting fat.
Yeah.
Like everybody is getting fat, and you got to think about why. And the two biggest reasons are the diet, like I just mentioned, how it's overly processed, The diets nowadays aren't nutrient dense, they are calorie dense, and there's a very big difference. And on top of that, nobody wants to work out. Nobody wants to work out. Everybody's trying to get like this like pharmaceutical drug that's just going to make all the fat melt off of them. And it's not how the body works.
I would even
And
go a layer deeper and say it's not that people don't just not want to work out. They don't even want to move. Like,
no,
like literally, you don't even have to go to the gym, but just move. Like, don't be a blob slug in one spot, because then your body adapts to that.
well, and like what they're doing when they aren't moving, specifically, they don't want to move because they want to kick off those dopaminergic pathways. They want to play video games. They want to consume music. They want to consume drugs. They want to consume alcohol. They want to watch movies. They want to hear music. Like all of that is dopamine response. All of it. Like looking at the screens we're looking at right now, blue light kicks off dopamine. And then the music kicks off dopamine. Movies, video games, all of it. Like everybody just wants to sit in front of a screen, get their dopamine high, which is a problem because if you understand anything about drug and alcohol abuse and tolerance, it's like the body is designed, like if there's a specific hormone or compound that gets constant like exposure to, it jacks up the tolerance so it's not overdoing it. So
the
your body
receptors down regulate. So you need more and more of it just to get that state.
Yeah. And so that means that the dopamine high isn't going to stay the same. So like all these people that are I used to play video games all the time. I still consider myself a gamer and I love video games. They're a really cool way for storytelling and all that other stuff. But that being said, like anybody that's played a video game, when you first start playing it, you're just excited to be playing it because it's something new. Like with Call of Duty, after you play for a while, the high wears off and you just get frustrated the whole time. And so people aren't paying attention to all this stuff. And it's frustrating to me because like I went to college, I got my bachelor's in exercise science. And once you learn how the body operates, you really understand why moderation is key for everything. Because then you don't want to have the dopamine down regulating like you brought up. You don't want to have the insulin tolerance jacking up because you're just consuming straight sugar all day, every day. Like, well, the funny thing is back to like, the health stuff is like, I'm drinking like just liquid sugar and caffeine right now, but I do it in moderation. That's like the first one I've had in like 3 weeks.
But like, even when you mentioned that before we started recording, this idea that nothing out of context can be considered healthy or unhealthy, right? It all requires context. Having one liquid sugar, mainlining one can of liquid sugar is very different from mainlining 6 cans a day, right? Like the consequences on your body are wildly different. And I think this whole idea that everyone is just seeking out that dopamine fix, like you can pick whatever hypernormal stimulus, right? It can be coffee, it can be alcohol, it can be porn, it can be donuts, it can be so many different things. All of it. But everyone is seeking this. Like when I go walk down the street, phones, I think we can't skip over the phones because they're like dopamine slot machines these days. And this idea that when I go for a walk and just observe, I see giant lineups in front of donut stores. I see everyone's eyeballs glued to their phone. I mean, we live in Canada, so cannabis is more, it's recreational, but it's everywhere. It's like scary how at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, I'll walk along, I'll see a couple people smoking joints. It's like, what do you do with your life that you can just crush joints at 1 p.m.? So I think this idea that I think that's my indicator for disease, right? Because everyone is trying to find something to soothe their pain. That's really what I think when I see these people. It's like, what is making you suffer so much that you need all these things?
Then there you go. Then we could define pain too, because what exactly are all these people relying on this drug to escape from, right?
Yes. What's the pain?
The pain can be. It could be like the low hanging fruit would be like some sort of disease, like glaucoma or something. I'm smoking weed.
Physical pain.
Yeah. Physical pain specifically, like neuropathy and all that other stuff. But I think that there's more of a, now that like, you can stop me here if you want, because this is kind of getting into another topic that you wanted to bring up.
No, let's go into this for a sec.
Okay, because I think the biggest pain is really like what people are trying to escape from is more of a pain of like feeling like they're not doing enough with their life. Like they're not like they're experiencing almost kind of like a philosophical spiritual pain
Yes.
because they're not pushing themselves hard enough. They know that they could be doing better, but they're so stuck in their ways and their routine of seeking out comfort versus actually trying to like go out and do what they and accomplish things that they believe that they could, right? This goes back to actually I think it was yesterday morning or the day before, speaking with the Cafe Bitcoin and Swan guys in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned how not a lot of people realize that the risk of breaking their routine is getting perceived by the individual as a danger. Because one thing about biological life that when you're studying exercise science or biology in general is that you realize that most living organisms are designed to be routine. Like everything about their life is routinized. You can talk like circadian rhythm, sex hormone maintenance, autophagy, like just breaking down food, like all of this other stuff is routinized. Like you have to have this routine to like build up efficiencies in the systems and all this like across the board.
Yeah, the body wants homeostasis. That is the goal at all times.
Yeah, and you can't, and like in a biological organism where like if you're gonna remain adaptable, right? You can't be a computer where homeostasis is a constant. Like there has to be fluctuations to kind of like react to adaptability and like live in a dynamic like scenario or environment, which the normal like, and this even touches on stuff that Alex Epstein's brought up in his book Fossil Future. The climate is extremely dynamic. Like the environments that we all live in, extremely dynamic, extremely dangerous. So if our bodies are intended to establish homeostasis in an extremely dangerous and dynamic environment, you have to be adaptable, which means that you have to have the fluctuating systems that are going to establish a kind of a rhythm or a routine. Yeah. And what people don't realize is that once you have a routine and it becomes routinized to the point of where you're comfortable in it, once you're comfortable in your routine, things that challenge the routine become an attack on you, an attack on your identity. Yeah. And I think the people that are the most unhealthy in Western society are the people that have routinized these extremely unhealthy living practices or lifestyles. So when they get told that they should start working out, they immediately think about the discomfort that's going to happen, because discomfort is very much real within working out and especially changing a routine. And so one thing that the human brain also does very, very well is kind of like a defense mechanism in a way, is that when we perceive danger or pain, we project it into perpetuity into the future. So because that way, if you find yourself in a very difficult, painful situation, your brain does that to spark you, to push you into changing that, so you're not constantly in pain and discomfort for the rest of your life. But when we do it psychologically, when we think about how our routine is getting challenged or our lifestyle is getting challenged, and we're experiencing discomfort now, like say if you're someone who hasn't been working out for your life, and then you start squatting or deadlifting, and you're experiencing that new pain, and you like, and your pain thresholds are extremely low, and you're extremely sensitive to that pain and discomfort, you're going to just assume that it's going to go on like that in the future. Like this gets into like anxiety and depression and all this other stuff too, is that what I think is going on is people are approaching like anxiety, for example, like you shouldn't be experiencing anxiety at all. Like that's not true. Like you should absolutely be experiencing anxiety, because that means that your brain is telling you, hey, something is kind of off. And that's your brain operating like it's supposed to. The problem is if you don't take the actions to change your dynamic to alleviate that situation, right?
Yeah, it's like pain. I think the fundamental thing is a misunderstanding of pain as this thing that is to be avoided.
It's a
and
signal. It's information. That's all it is.
exactly. But it's a lesson. It's a call for change fundamentally. It can be physical pain, it can be emotional pain. You know, it seems like this
And then
spiritual pain.
then there's pain of injury and pain of growth. Those are very, very different.
Yes, exactly. But it's really about how you interpret the signal, right? This idea that so many people have no sense of meaning today. The world is in constant chaos. They're finding it hard to just recalibrate and make sense of things. And I think, you know, we'll get into how does fiat introduce all this chaos that we are forced to deal with, and which can be painful to deal with. The idea that once you experience pain, you have one of two choices. You can either change yourself and take action, or you can change the world by seeking something to dull that pain, right? It can be a pill, it can be a donut, it can be whatever.
It can be a book, it can be a movie, it can be whatever.
There's so many things. Yes, there's so many things available to us today, more powerful than they ever have been before, right? This whole idea of hypernormal stimuli. It's like when you eat something that is unnaturally filled with liquid sugar is a hypernormal stimuli. When you watch porn on the supercomputer in your pocket, it is a hypernormal stimuli. It's beyond the threshold of what humans are designed to be exposed to, and it just hacks our brain because it's so addictive. Yep. People are opting to take the more comfortable decision of just soothing themselves. Exactly. And they're not, like you said, change is hard. And this idea that the more you exercise a pattern, the deeper that pattern ingrains, the harder it is to bump out of that, right? If every time I get uncomfortable, I go have a beer, then that becomes my hardwired habit. And the more I do that, the harder it becomes to not do that if I'm faced with a situation like that again.
Yep.
So yeah, it just seems like fiat incentivizes the availability of things to soothe ourselves and makes it so, I mean, humans are designed to use as little energy as possible, right? This is like you know, like
that's how you seek out efficiencies.
Right. But we're not built to live in today's world. This is the fucking problem. So how do we solve this? And I think part of it has to be solved through incentivizing people understanding that pain is a valuable signal not to be avoided, right? Like I used to be a physical therapist. People come in with knee pain, they're in distress, they're anxious, they're all flustered because they're like, I need to run. If I can't run, I'm going to be mentally unhealthy and be terrible to everyone around me. This knee pain is stopping me from running. This is a huge stress in my life, right? I don't know if my knee's breaking down, if this is a permanent thing, if this is catastrophic. Once you explain to them, like all you have is a little bit of joint irritation because you sit all freaking day and then you pound the pavement running and you can't use your ass to propel you forward. So your knee's doing 5 times the work. Once they understand that, and they understand that there is a cause to the problem, there is a way to eliminate the cause, and there is an action they can take, all of a sudden they're not really in as much pain anymore because they understand the pain. And
because the anxiety is also leveraging their discomfort.
Yes. It's like a vicious loop where they catastrophize all these weird scenarios that could happen that usually don't because they're uncertain of what the hell the pain is. And they get into this like tailspin where now they're just trying to not be in pain all the time. So they're taking all these substances or engaging in all these shitty behaviors to make themselves feel better, when really all they need is to understand the pain and be given some clarity. And I think the fiat system does not help us understand health at all. And so everyone is anxious as shit because everyone's feeling pain and no one knows what to do about it because they don't get it. They don't understand that pain is good. If you didn't have pain, you'd die because you'd kill yourself with it's good.
And especially for like the physical therapist like yourself, like getting into the fiat and health like intersection, one of the things so I got a degree in exercise science, and a lot of people like sometimes the first question is like, am I a personal trainer? No, like I really don't like the personal training profession how it is now today. It's gotten so saturated that programs like NASM, for example, they make it easy to become a personal trainer. But the problem is that there's so many personal trainers that aren't also good teachers. Like they aren't like the personal trainers I've interacted with, which has been tons, especially the people that I graduated with. They aren't like on the level of you and I, for example. Like they don't try to analyze and explain all these different dynamics of educating the individual on like what their body is feeling and why, and how the individual should like observe and pay attention and remain aware to like how their body is feeling and what it's doing all day. especially in reaction to like what you're eating and consuming. Because it when the individual, when I'll say when, not if, because everybody's going to get hurt at some point in their life.
Yep.
Once an individual gets hurt and they don't understand their body and they don't know how to like stay aware of it, and they don't know how to like properly approach like what's going on, they come to individuals like yourself, the physical therapist, and they're just feeling pain. They haven't sussed out what that pain is or what it could be from. Because like you were saying, like the people that experience pain from going to the personal trainer for the first time, they don't know the difference between delayed onset muscle soreness and overtraining soreness and injury. Like they just don't know the difference because they haven't been paying attention to their body long enough to actually suss it out and everything.
Yeah, they become illiterate to their body's signals, basically.
Yes, I'm going to steal that from you now, from going forward.
Everything I have, I stole from someone, so all good.
Right? It's all just iteration of an iteration.
Yeah. Someone told me once, it's not about not stealing, it's about stealing from a lot of. If you steal only from one person, that's copying. If you steal from everyone, that's called innovation.
Yeah. Well, it's called amalgamation.
Yeah.
Or in aggregate.
Yeah, that's what Bruce Lee did.
Yeah. But just like the over fiatization of the economy is causing the over fiatization of all these other industries. And it gets down to the point of like in health, whether you're talking about personal trainers or doctors, is like nobody's actually trying to solve the problems, which the real problems are in understanding and education.
Yes. I think health is fundamentally an education problem. But I think the world we live, health is a low time preference endeavor, and the world is a high time preference world, which stems from the fundamental incentives baked into the money. So if we use high time preference money, that high time preference, because money trickles into everything we do, that incentive structure baked into the money trickles into everything we do. And I'm not a physical therapist anymore. I got out of that a couple of years ago. And one of my biggest things right now, in terms of the way I'm thinking about conversations around health, is actually bringing up the idea that we, in order to move forward productively from a disease world to a health world, we have to take a serious look at changing language. Because when we throw around the word health way too liberally, and most of the time it doesn't reflect reality, right? Like I'll give you 3 examples. We talk about healthcare system. All we have is a disease care system. We have a system that is there to diagnose and intervene with disease. That has nothing to do with health. So if we change healthcare to disease care system, that would be a reflection of reality. And maybe it would help people acknowledge that we have no fucking healthcare system. All we have is a system to take care of sick people. It waits for you to get sick, and then it stops you from dying. It does nothing to help you understand health, because people who work in those professions, which we call health professionals, are actually just disease professionals, and their job is to have you have a little bit less disease, but the incentive baked in is to have you keep them coming to you for advice, because that's how you make money. So healthcare should be disease care, health professional should be disease professional, and health insurance should be disease insurance. Those are actually what they are. Like if we stopped calling them health, we would acknowledge, wow, we really don't do anything for health, so it's no wonder no one's healthy.
I would even take it a step further and say it's actually symptom care.
Sure.
Because they're
symptom management, palliative.
Yeah, because they're not even, like, in reality, they're not trying to care for the disease even.
No.
Like
we're not trying to assess the cause. It's just symptom management. That's what the money is made from.
Yep. Most of especially the pharmaceutical industry is just like almost none. It's almost kind of like the shitcoin like market, because
I agree.
Because like most of the pharmaceuticals out there, they don't solve a problem. They hijack your body's systems to try and like just like we were saying, just alleviate the symptoms versus actually alleviating the problem. It's like, oh, you're hurt. Take some Tylenol, just mask up that pain signal. You're good. Like you'll be fine.
Yeah, like that. No,
that's not how that works.
That's the equivalent of your house burning down. Your fire alarm goes off. Fire alarm is the pain you feel. Taking a Tylenol is like taking the battery out of the fire alarm and pretending like it's all good. Your house is still burning down. Like, we need to stop telling people to do this. Really this is part of the problem. And I think it's just like a misunderstanding of pain. Pain is like this wise old man that teaches you lessons. And if you ignore the old man, you have to retake the lesson, and the lesson becomes more shitty the more times you take it. And everyone's being told not to listen to this old dude that is wise as shit by the people who are claimed to be the health experts.
Yeah, and then once it comes to the point of where they want to come ask the old dude for advice, he's dead.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can't even. It sounds like he's talking Chinese because you haven't listened to him for so long. You forgot how to speak his language. It's like I think that's where this body literacy thing comes in, where we don't even know how to self-regulate because we don't know how to interpret signals from our body, whether that's pain or fatigue or low energy or shitty mood. It's like no one is taking the time to just like understand what their body's telling them. And I think the time element is part of why fiat creates a disease world. Is if fiat is stealing your time, you have no time to think about health, to engage with the process of health, or to understand what your body's telling you. So it seems like that's this fundamental thing that, okay, we become our incentives. Fiat is high time preference. Health is a low time preference endeavor. Those are not compatible. Therefore, a world of health is not compatible with the world of fiat. So how do we move forward beyond that? And I think Bitcoin presents a low time preference money, which aligns with the low time preference endeavor of health. And just the business incentives, I saw it firsthand as a physio, man. It was insane. Regardless of what your intentions are, I firmly believe that everyone who goes into medicine, physio, any of the quote unquote, disease professions goes in with good intentions to help people. Same with personal trainers, right? These people go in with honest intentions.
But they don't understand the money system.
Right. And whether they realize it or not, they become the incentive built into their money, which affects their industry. So as a physio, my incentive, whether I'm trying to be a good person and help people or not, is I need you to rely on coming to see me and come to see me multiple times a week in order for me to make money. Because if I teach you the root cause of your problem and I empower you with an understanding to take care of yourself, you don't need me. You don't pay me. So I'm not even if I want to do that, I'm not incentivized to do that. It's against my business interests to help you with your health in a way that empowers you. I have to keep you dependent on me. And this is the fiat beast that has engulfed and corrupted everything related to disease care, so that health has no financial incentive right now unless we innovate better ways to make money from health.
It's also why I decided I didn't want to be a personal trainer too, because I'm also not a good personal trainer in that sense. Like the friends that I've helped with like their health and fitness is like most people that I've identified that most people that say they want a personal trainer is they want somebody that's just going to hound them to get in the gym. And that's not me. Like
they want to forfeit responsibility, right?
Yeah. And to the point that you're making is like the people that I do train is like I make it clear that it's like I'm gonna like teach you, I'm gonna educate you more than I'm gonna train you, so that you don't have to come back to me, because I have more better things I want to do with my time than be here with you.
And you can't do it for them at the end of the day, right? They must do it themselves. I think there's a difference between guiding someone, which is really just like, here's what I've done that worked. Here's some good resources. Have at it. You need to take the cost of you improving is responsibility. If you're not willing to pay that, you can go pay someone for some fake solution, that they might convince you is going to make you feel better. But at the end of the day, the only way to improve one's health is to pay the price of responsibility. If you're not willing to pay that,
and accountability,
you're not ready yet.
So. Yeah. And I was gonna, you brought it up a few minutes ago. The individual, because of the fiat system, they don't have the time.
Yeah.
That's specifically a big one as far as like spirituality and philosophy goes. Because the vast majority of the participants in the economy today, because of the fiat systems and the incentives baked into it, they don't have the time to, go into all this health stuff. But that also means that they don't have the time to manage their healthy mind state. And that can, and like, if you take that, so I just wrote an article for my Medium. Like, it got a little esoteric, so which it didn't get a whole lot of traction, which there's nothing wrong with that. But what I argued in this article is that individuals that are suffering from anxiety and depression, for just like the easy ones, if you're an individual that's looking to alleviate those, and you're trying to truly alleviate it as far as like low time preference, like for the rest of your life kind of thing, they have to take the time to understand the body so that they can understand how the body, like specifically like mind states, like the release of cortisol, for example, how those stimulate specific environments within the body, like chemical balance within the brain, that is more conducive to negative thoughts than it is to positive thoughts. And you understand how to manage the physiological and nutritional side, then you can gain the time to better like manage the psychological aspect to your own mind, as far as like understanding like what you're feeling and why. And then you can also get into the aspect of kind of like sussing out what kind of spirituality you have, like what you actually believe. And then once you get to that point, then you can actually start to figure out like your own life philosophies. And then you actually get to the point of holistic, full spectrum health, like we're talking about.
Yeah, I think if people, the medical world, I have a friend that went through medical school. He told me something really profound. He said medical school is really expensive drug rep training now.
Yep. They're technicians.
And that, I was just like, that is insane. That it makes,
it's so depressing.
Once you understand it, it doesn't make it any more comfortable to realize what's going on.
It makes it more uncomfortable.
Yes, but at least I get comfort from understanding it, and then I get also discomfort from seeing like how fucked up this has just become. But I think if we viewed depression and anxiety as an adaptive response to be understood, not a problem to be covered up, it's a completely different paradigm of how people approach that, right?
Yeah.
And I really think the asymmetry of we learn nothing about health, so we are at the whims of the knowers, which it turns out don't actually understand this shit. They just want to give you a pill. If we understand that dynamic, well, it has to fall back to personal responsibility. You can't expect these people that are deeply entrenched into this pharma-based programming to change on a dime what they're doing and actually start to help people. Number one, they're not financially incentivized to do that. Number two, it's hard as shit to pivot like that. So it must come back to the individual. And so long as people are always trying to find an exogenous solution to their health problems, right? The pill, the person, the thing, the tool, the trainer, there's this misallocation of capital, which is you should be spending time learning about health / we should fix the political mess so that we actually teach kids about health. Like the easy solution is teach kids about health and money. They're the only two things that affect every human, regardless of what they're interested in. Like, what the hell? What that seems so glaring and obvious. And, you can take the perspective that they're trying to make us sick and stupid. I don't think it's completely that. There's probably some of that.
I don't either.
But I really think at the end of the day, one thing I see with Bitcoiners is like they speak the language of personal responsibility. To become a Bitcoiner, you must accept personal responsibility for understanding money. It's the only way there.
Yep.
And so,
and that also explains kind of like the prevalence of popularity of Stoicism within Bitcoiners as well.
Yes,
because you can't practice Stoicism effectively without specifically accountability and responsibility. Because you're like, Stoicism is all about taking accountability and responsibility over your outputs and like what you're outputting as far as from yourself to input into a conversation. Like, for example, I was given kind of a lecture in a Spaces a while ago to some individuals that were kind of screaming at each other. And I was like, guys, like, I get that you can want to have an actual like debate back and forth, the whole like actually exchange information and everything and suss out who is more educated and who's like the better like resource of information, like you're talking about. But for Stoics, like the whole point is to leave emotion out of the conversation. Yeah. Like leave emotion out so that people can figure out what the hell is actually going on. And like that, and we can tie that back into like politics in particular. Like recently is like everything's just trying to hijack emotions to this just blah. Yeah,
it's all rhetoric. It's like we've lost all substance. And this health network I work for, we have this big network of people who like actively engage with health at a serious level and then are willing to have conversations, like dialogue. And one of the hardest things to extract, and I think we've done a pretty good job of it, is productive disagreement. Like we literally have a
Oh,
document called the dialogue covenant where it's like rules of engagement. And it's really based on the like principles of Bitcoin, where it's like we don't need a mediator or an arbiter. We don't need rulers. We need rules that we all agree on, and then we don't need rulers, but we all have to enforce. We all have to know those rules and enforce them. Like, you know, always be respectful, give people a chance to talk, be more interested in learning than being right. I think that's a big thing that I think people need to buckle down on.
yep.
The idea of just having
It's a code of honor.
exactly. It's a code of honor. And what that has done is allowed us to respectfully mention when someone's using a logical fallacy, well, people know what that is. So we can like lovingly and kindly mention, well, you're targeting the person, not what they're saying.
Yep.
And, you know, we've just curated this community of people who are willing to engage in productive disagreement, which I think is very hard in the modern world because social media is not conducive to it at all. But I think that's how we get to truth, right? Is like by disagreeing respectfully and
Yeah.
acknowledging like, you know, if two people are having a conversation trying to figure out who knows more or whose truth is more valid, you have to be comfortable accepting that it's better to be wrong and learn than it is to try and defend a shitty position. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think that ties back in Stoicism because it teaches you to like recognize your ego and to view the world objectively instead of just being stuck in your own way of thinking, which goes back to what you were saying. It's like people are just stuck in these belief structures that they're so heavily invested in. And I think the biggest belief structure is fiat, right? Like,
Yeah.
especially people who have all my friends that work in finance are going to be the last people to adopt Bitcoin because they are so deeply programmed. And the effort to unlearn everything they paid a shitload of money to learn and are getting nudged. And, you know, the hilarious thing is like, they all think they're fucking geniuses right now because they're like, yeah, look at my portfolio, look at these stocks. I'm like, dude, that has nothing to do with you. You could have
Nobody's
blindly,
portfolio is doing good right now.
you could get a dog to wag its tail and choose stocks, and they would have looked like a genius too. It's like, you know, it's so crazy. But you know, in your view, how does Bitcoin incentivize health? How does Bitcoin help us get out of this disease centric culture? Like, what are things you're thinking of these days of how Bitcoin has helped you with your health, or how Bitcoin is helping people you know or people around you? Maybe be nudged towards engaging with the process of health. What are you seeing?
Well, the benefit to Bitcoin is that it touches so many different ways of thought, as in like economics, finance, what is money, proof of work, like all these different dynamics. Like it really challenges the accepted narrative, and it breaks a lot of molds in the sense of whichever one it, like whichever aspect grips you and causes you to look into Bitcoin more, it's going to cause you like it's almost like each one is like a little pulling out of like the matrix a little bit. Like
Mm.
it breaks you back up above the clouds, and you're like, oh damn, like there is a different way of thinking about this stuff. And then once you go back down, and then you like below the clouds, and you see the whole world as it is within the system, you're like, dude, this isn't right.
Yeah,
Like
you can't
this,
unsee it once you see it.
yeah, because like then you start looking at everything, and you're like, you real like your finance buddies, like once you get into the system, like after you like break out, and then you see like, for example, like specifically what money and currency is, like the difference between the two, and then you get back in, and then you see like how inefficient all these different financial products are, and you start pointing to them, and you asking these guys like, hey, like, like this could be done better. Like if it wasn't from within this system, if we reimagined it, like there's definitely ways we could do this better. And they're like, no, no way. The US dollar is like the best system. Like US dollar, the Swiss system is like the best we're gonna get. It's like, man, if you really feel that way, that's extremely depressing.
So this happens in health all the time. So the health network I work for is specialized in feet. So I have a lot of colorful disagreements with people, like for example, with dietitists who slap people in orthotics, which are not only they're worse than useless. Not only do they not help, they actually make the problem worse. It's quite interesting.
Imagine that.
But what I see with them is the same thing I see with the incumbents in the financial world, in that their salary depends on them not knowing the truth.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if that's the incentive
well,
structure you're dealing with, you're screwed.
yeah, because I mean, I just like for those that don't really buy into that, it's like if you're a priest for a theology and whatever it is that you pray to, there is proof out there that say that theology, I'm not saying anything about any of the current ones or anything like that, but if there was hard proof that your system was wrong, would you be able to accept it and stay in that position and continue to do a really good job in that position? I would argue not, because you're going to constantly be faced with that reality, and you're like, man, this isn't right. And that's precisely what the foot people are doing in your example. It's just because
people are stuck.
There was something else I wanted to touch on that I can't remember now.
Hopefully it comes to you, but what I'll add in the meantime is that person who gets these nudges from reality saying that what they have adopted and thought to be true their whole lives and have built a career on, once they start to get more and more nudges that doesn't reflect the truth, every nudge is like a little bit of pain, right? And what I've seen is that the people who get to the other side simply experience too much pain to bear. And so the pain of changing their perspective and literally having to change their entire worldview, which is fucking painful, because implicit in that is the admission that you've been wrong most of your life. When that pain is less than the pain you're experiencing by constantly getting nudged from reality saying that what you're doing is fake and bullshit, then people switch. So it's almost like pain is the driver of all human change. Some people simply aren't experiencing enough pain yet to change. And I think in the world of finance, those dudes are in for a world of pain, because it's not going to get any better. Like, you can't.
Pain is the most successful teacher.
It is. I agree.
You can give into it early, or you can wait until it's unbearable, like you're saying.
And unfortunately, most people wait till there's catastrophe is often the genesis of transformation, which sucks. That's a
clip. That's a good one right there.
I stole that from someone, 100%. But it's, my parents are a prime example with, they're in the fiat world. They've lived in the fiat world. They're boomers. They've been treated very well by the fiat world. They think they're getting rich in the fiat measuring stick. And until they see their purchasing power get sliced in half, until they experience pain, there's no need to change. And it's really, I've come to understand that, I've always been frustrated when I see someone in pain and they're not taking ownership. It frustrated me, but now I've just realized that when the pain is enough and they're ready, they will change. And I'm not going to stress over trying to change them quicker. You just have to make sure that they have the tools to interpret the pain. And then other than that, it's just a matter of time, right?
Yeah. And like specifically, the pain of being wrong is so much easier to take than the pain of regret.
Yes.
Like, I had so much regret, like almost a decade ago. Like, basically, I turned my life around when I enlisted in the military. Like, when I enlisted the Army, that was basically my decision to, like, I'm not going to do this regret crap anymore.
Yep.
And I can put myself comfortably as a living testament that the pain of being wrong I will take that over the pain of regret any day.
It's like being wrong is the cost of learning. So not wanting to be wrong means never wanting to learn. And that's a really sketchy thing to be in a world that's constantly changing, that you have to adapt to, or you get left alone and basically die, metaphorically or actually. Not wanting to be wrong means you are in for a world of pain.
Yeah. Well, and so that brings up another topic that I want to touch on too. It's like the funny thing about like what's been happening the last couple of years. And this will overlap. There's significant overlap between the Bitcoiners and the gym bros. Okay. And the reason is, now there's a lot of gym bros that are Bitcoiners, a lot of Bitcoiners that are gym bros. But if you take the two different groups,
how do you define gym bro? Just for someone who hasn't heard the term. Paint a picture.
Like 5 years ago, it would have been the guys that we were all reading articles on bodybuilding.com. Okay. Like, you specifically like rely on bodybuilding.com. You're in the gym all the time, like pumping iron, like classic kind of meathead. That's, that whole shtick. But the interesting parallels between the gym bros and the Bitcoiners is that the Bitcoiners, obviously they've seen like how much of the system is wrong. and they kind of had their mold broken, and they're like, okay, like this isn't adding up, we're not going to do this. But the gym bros specifically are the really interesting thing that like I don't think a lot of people were actually like cognizant of or paying attention to. So, and the reason I bring them up is that over the last like 20 years consistently, is within exercise science and fitness science and physiology and health and biomechanics, the science has been constantly like almost on a monthly basis, like, hey, like the stuff that we thought we're finding out is incorrect.
Right.
Like whether it's nutrition or physiology or whatever, like some of the stuff, like for example, when my dad went through high school, when he was a power lifter and all this other stuff, he was telling me about how they were using Pepsi as a pre-workout. So nowadays we know it's like if you're gonna do, and like by the way, I still see people in the gym drinking this crap as pre-workout. No, like you don't drink carbonated waters or carbonated anything. Like you don't have a bunch of sugar as far as your like it's just a bunch of no-nos that we know now. But the gym bros, like they had already had a lot of experience with like, hey, like just because it's coming from science doesn't necessarily mean it's dogma or doctrine.
Right.
And so for the last couple of years, what's been happening, whether it's you want to talk about Blovid or like all this other stuff, specifically finding out that our institutions are not doctrine. They're not a religious institution. Like they are capable of being wrong because they're led by humans. Because humans are constantly wrong all the time. And then like, if you're paying attention to that, and then you're paying attention to like theoretical physics, like last year they found out that there was neutrinos down in like that they picked up in Antarctica that were going in the exact opposite direction of any of the other neutrinos that they found. So they're like, what does this mean? Yeah. Like
we have to rethink everything.
There is far more what we don't understand than what we do understand. And even what we do understand, we don't understand all of it. So like we basically don't understand it. So like the people that are in these like groups, like the Bitcoiners and the gym bros, like these are the individuals that are like, we're the groups that are just like, okay, we should like really avoid getting into these echo chambers and these dogmas. Cause then it specifically the fiat dogma. Cause then you like get all the other problems that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, lack of diversity equals death, right? Like monoculture in the natural world gets just destroyed because it's unnatural. And I think this monoculture of ideas that is, unwilling and unflexible to ever change is going to get broken, right? It's like a piece of metal.
Too much rigidity produces fragility.
Right. It's like make an aircraft wing out of cold rolled steel and see how that goes. It's going to snap. It has to be flexible, right? It has to move so that it doesn't get destroyed. And I think, unfortunately, there's this like stairwell of pain where you're unflexible. You get more and more hints from the outside world that you're wrong, and then you just get shattered, and that's super painful. And if on step 2, instead of going to step 10, if on step 2 people were just curious, I think curiosity is this thing that's lost now, where curiosity implies you don't know. It's right. Like implied in curiosity is I don't know what the truth is, but I kind of want to find it out. So I'm going to be open-minded enough to like seeing what's out there and making my own judgment, think for myself. But if you're not curious and you think you know the truth and you know just enough to think you know everything, you're going to get destroyed in enough time, or you're going to shrink the world you engage with so that you're never wrong until you're just like in a silo, not talking to anyone. That's not fun either. That's painful.
Yeah.
One thing I want to talk about is this. Okay. If we work down assumptions, we say, okay, we become our incentives. Money is the foundation. For culture, those incentives permeate everything we do. Fiat is high time preference. 2 things I want to unpack because I know you know a lot about these, or at least one of them. One of the articles you wrote was all about this: is high time preference food and high time preference relationships. And so let's kind of let's start with food and keep it high level. We won't get into the weeds, but this idea that the food that we eat now, even the way we farm, is high time preference, right? Yeah. And even to preface this, high time preference means you value the present more than the future. Low time preference means you value the future more than the present. So
delayed gratification.
Yes, long-term thinking, delayed gratification, that's all low time preference.
Mm-hmm.
High time preference is like, I want the one cookie right this second instead of two tomorrow. It's like the present is so much more important. And this idea that, how does this stem from fiat? Well, if I don't spend a fiat dollar today, it's going to be worth less tomorrow. So foundationally, whether I acknowledge that or not, I am incentivized to spend today and not save because it can be worth less tomorrow. Whereas Bitcoin flips that. What I spend today will be, one sat today is going to be worth more tomorrow. My foundational incentive, whether I acknowledge it or not, is I'm incentivized to save instead of spend. Whereas fiat is I want to spend instead of save. So let's talk about high time preference food. When someone says high time preference food, what does that make you think of, and how do we sort of give a little bit of context as to how our food that we buy in the supermarket is high time preference from the individual, and how farmers are being basically forced to adopt a high time preference way of making food to make cheaper, quicker, to make food quicker and cheaper, because we've just fried the soils, and it's the only way so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, just from a high level. How has our food become high time preference, and what does that mean?
Yeah, so we'll start with the food and then go back to the farmer and then wrap it back into the food again. So with the food, this touches back on what we've already like briefly touched on earlier, as far as like the majority of what you find in the Americanized supermarkets, whether it's Walmart or Target or whatever. Like a lot of your listeners have probably heard the whole like health shtick of like when you go to the supermarket, you make the ring around the outside aisles. Like that's where all the healthy stuff is. Because the inside is where you'll find the cereals, the sugars, the processed breads,
food-like products, I call them.
Food-like products, yes.
Not food, food-like products.
And we say food-like products specifically because they're highly processed. And highly processed means that, like, again, food-like, they're going to say that they have all these different nutrients in them and everything, trying to argue that they're still, like, close to, like, real food, when in reality they're, like, one of the farthest things you can get.
Even more weird, they'll actually say that the Franken processed foods are better for you than the real foods.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
they're like, those avocados aren't as good. We've jacked up these nutrients in this glob of goop.
It's got
and
more
it's better than
avocados. Yeah. And so like the problem with these foods is that because they're processed and because they're amalgamated in this way, and they say that like all these nutrient inputs are in there, that it's basically the same thing. And it could be farthest from the truth, because what most people aren't aware of is that within the body, when it comes to breaking down food or food-like products, the way your stomach and your body works is that we secrete specific enzymes, whether it's amylase, which is to break down sugar, which is in your saliva, or whether it's protease, which is an enzyme to break down protein. These enzymes are very, very, very specifically engineered. Like, I don't want to say engineered because it sounds like, aliens made us or something. But
evolution has carved these things to be highly specific to work best with food.
Yes,
maybe that's a good way.
Like the way I prefer to describe it is that our body learned how to break down these naturally occurring compounds. Like through evolution, our body learned how to produce these specific enzymes that break down these compounds that are naturally occurring and consistently occurring in our lifestyle.
Yes.
Whether it's fructose, which is sugar from fruit, or like lactose, which is from milk, or you talk about protein that's coming from beef or chicken or whatever. The enzymes that we produce are specifically structured to break down these specific chemical compounds. The problem is that these processed foods, these food-like processed foods, the compounds that are present in them, because they're man-made and they're not naturally occurring, they don't fit the very specific puzzle piece-like structure of these enzymes, which means that these enzymes don't break them down properly.
Right.
And this also comes into very, very specific relevance with regards to diabetes and insulin. Because there's so many fake sugars that are out there, like specifically like diet drinks, like these diet sodas, that I would rather see everybody drinking regular soda that has real sugar, natural sugar in it, than all this diet crap that's out there. Because this diet crap is like, oh, it's still sweet, but it doesn't have calories from sugar, so it's healthier. No, because the problem is that, again, going back to this enzyme situation, is these fake sugars, when you introduce them into the body, and the insulin is released in response to that sugar intake. Insulin is no different than these other enzymes. When insulin is in the system and it cannot break down, or it can't at least stimulate the solutions to breaking down the sugar and getting it out of your blood, then, because when it comes up to these fake sugars, it's like, oh, like the insulin looks at it, it's like, oh wait, you're not who I'm here for. So I'm going to hang around. I'm going to hang around until I find who I'm here for.
Yeah.
So then you have a system.
And I haven't found what I'm here for, so I'm going to call way more of my friends to come because we got to have a search party.
Yeah. And then, what results is you still have the fake sugar in your system. Now you have the insulin in your system. Neither of them are getting cleared.
Right.
So then, this also touches on cancer, because one of the things that I also don't think most of the public is aware of is that cancer is really just uncontrolled growth. And it's also a reaction. Okay. I don't want people to quote me on this because I'm probably going to misidentify or analyze this whole situation.
It's all good.
But
go with it.
Cancer tends to be stimulated when our body is coming in contact with specific compounds or relationships that is not normal for our bodies.
Yes.
So
cancer is an adaptive response.
Yes, it's an adaptive response, and it tends to just result in uncontrolled growth,
which requires fuel. And back to what you're saying, if we're not able to remove sugars from our system, despite insulin being out there trying to search for it, there is this giant pool of fuel that is a feast for cancer cells.
Yep.
Right? They have a buffet every freaking day because our body's not able to get rid of this excess fuel.
Yeah. And so this is where it gets really, really scary, and it should terrify everybody, because back to our analogy of the fake sugar being there, insulin not getting cleared, both are hanging out in the body. So when they're both are hanging out in the body, you get the situation where you now have one compound that is man-made that shouldn't be there, that is stimulating the insulin that technically shouldn't be there. So the insulin's hanging out, and the more the insulin hangs out, it increases the susceptibility to develop type 2 diabetes, right? And then the other thing is hanging out there, and that's going to increase the susceptibility to develop cancer because it's a man-made product that shouldn't be there to begin with. But it gets worse if that whole situation, if that tendency, if that lifestyle, if that behavior isn't changed to prevent that situation from continually occurring. If it goes down the road and that situation continues to occur and the individual develops type 2 diabetes, where the pancreas isn't releasing enough insulin to clear out sugars as would naturally occur, then you get into a situation where, because your pancreas isn't releasing enough insulin to clear sugar, then there's more sugar in the body consistently that is feeding that cancer that you just talked about, that is getting stimulated by the fake sugar that was already there to begin with. So it turns into this cascade of problems. And then on top of that, which I failed to talk about earlier, is the inflammatory response to all of this.
Yes.
Because high sugar glucose intake tends to result in a high inflammatory response within the body. And then on top of that, because inflammation isn't just all negative. There's a lot of material out there the last couple of years that suggests that inflammation in general is bad in the body, and that's not true.
It's an adaptive response.
It's an adaptive response. It's supposed to do that, whether it's a virus that the body, the body will kick off inflammation if you have a viral infection to try and slow down the reproduction rate of the virus to kick that virus out of the body. And then on the other hand, too, with working out, inflammation is a natural response to the adaptation response. It also stimulates healing and growth.
I think if we just not redefined, but if we sort of accepted that inflammation is the process of healing, but if the process of healing, which is designed to be like an acute response of damage, acute healing, repair happens, homeostasis. If we're constantly in healing mode, using all of our energy to heal, what we really should be asking, which is the fundamental problem of why chronic inflammation is so shitty, is what is constantly creating a stimulus for a body to always have to heal? What is the threat that's constantly happening that's forcing inflammation to happen chronically? And, you have to go pretty deep in understanding in order to get there. But let me see if I can tag this to this. Okay.
We still have to tie it back to soil because I haven't even got to that.
We'll talk about soil next. But okay. Fiat is high time preference. High time preference foods have worked our way into our system as fake sugars, right? Because they're really cheap to make. They don't take much time. You don't actually have to like go through the process of farming nutrient dense foods. You can literally just make something in a factory and say it's better than the natural thing. Because they're so cheap, people are incentivized to buy low calorie foods, especially when money is scarce and real food is scarce because it takes energy, and people just are unwilling to go through the arduous energy intensive process. And so really fiat causes fucking cancer and diabetes. Let's just leave it there, because that's the train of thought going from high time preference money creates high time preference food, which creates disease. And when you layer high time preference disease management on top of that, it's even worse.
Then it's a nuclear bomb.
Then it is. And I think that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. So let's talk about farming, because high time preference food, these food-like products, are cheap and easy to make. Mm-hmm. Why are we being nudged to make the cheap and easy to make things that are causing us disease? Well, I think part of that problem is the ecosystem of farming, right? And this idea that even the real foods, like even if we compare Franken food-like products to real food is supposed to be nutrient dense. Franken foods are nutrient empty but calorie rich. So we're basically overfed and undernourished. And our signals saying that we've gotten the nutrients never stop. So we just keep eating these empty bombs of calories of toxic chemicals, these soups. And then we wonder why everyone's got diabetes and cancer. It's like, it seems pretty obvious. But even the foods that are supposed to be nutrient dense are now like at a significant deficit to what their nutrient capacity is. So let's talk about how high time preference has an impact on farming. What is high time preference farming and what is low time preference farming? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we'll start back at the supermarket again, because that's really kind of like the biggest driver. The supermarkets are producing these Franken foods, and they sell more of these Franken foods because, like we've discussed, they're cheap and they're addictive. So more people come back to them.
This is another thing.
And they never go bad. So like they incentivize you three ways right there. They taste good, they're cheap, and they don't go bad basically ever. Yeah. So they're like, oh, just buy a bunch of it, stick it up in your cupboards, and you'll be good if the world ends, which you won't.
Or as a supermarket, you can just order a shit ton of it and not have to worry about it going bad. It's like we can just keep it on the shelf
and then make basically 10 to 1, 100 to 1 margins on it, and you're swimming in cash.
Exactly.
And so they're incentivizing the farmers in this way to produce the crops that help them to produce these products. High fructose corn syrup, corn being part of it. So palm oil, rapeseed, like Texas Slim talks about. By the way, Texas Slim in the beef initiative, he and I got onto this like when he started everything early on. So like if your viewers haven't like consumed his content, like go find it. But Modern T-Man on Twitter is his handle.
He's so smart. And I think he's like, if you can, go to a beef initiative meetup. Because beef is coalescing with Bitcoin in the most beautiful, it's like a relationship that's meant to be, because ranching beef is high time preference proof of work, or low time preference proof of work. Whereas making Franken foods is high time preference proof of factory. That's all it is. It's not proof of work. It's proof of stake, really.
Yeah. And these farmers are getting pushed by these major supermarket corporations to produce more corn so they can produce more of these products. And then at the same time, they're also getting pushed by, I'll get into that in a second. So these farmers are getting pushed to like really over industrialize these monocropping strategies, greater yield, faster yield. And then the GMO aspect of these crops to begin with, they're trying to between selective breeding and some eugenics as far as manipulating the genetics of the crops in within themselves to produce bigger corn cobs, bigger spinach leaves, all these bigger apples, bigger fruit. They're trying to make everything bigger, greater yield. But the problem is that monocropping is not conducive to soil health. Like it really, really destroys soil health. And the reason that people should care is that if you want nutrients out of your crops, the crops need to get nutrients from somewhere.
Yes.
Like it's like it's not immaculate conception. Like they don't just pull the nutrients out of the air. Like
starts with soil.
Yeah, it starts with the soil, because really there's only a few nutrients that crops are getting from the air, and that's going to be nitrogen and carbon dioxide. Well, and light, but whatever. So like down in the soil, we have to think about how the nutrients get to the crops, get to the root system in general. And that's actually through what's called the mycorrhizal biome, or the microbiome. Like I wouldn't call it a microbiome technically because it's huge, but it's called mycorrhizal. And that's where like fungi and bacteria are breaking down all of these. So like, for example, nitrogen, which is a huge part of fertilizer. A lot of the nitrogen that's in fertilizer that like these farmers, these monocroppers are putting on their fields, it doesn't really break down that well so that the plant life can use it. Ends up getting washed away in the rain anyway. And that's how and then it ends up polluting like the watershed and the river systems and all that other stuff. And then it'll cause like ponds and lakes there's too much nitrogen, and it stimulates algae growth, and then it kills the pond or the lake. And then you have to deal with all that crap. But then, so back to the soil.
And when you have depleted soil, you have weak plants. Yeah. And weak plants require protection, artificial protection, in order to survive. And so that's where you have like herbicides, insecticides, all these insane chemicals designed to kill life. They're designed to kill life. They claim they selectively kill certain types of life, herbs or insects.
Too bad.
But let's be real. It's not good for humans either, right? Anything that kills life is going to have some sort of effect on us. So the monocrop is so unnatural and such a beautiful buffet for nature, because it never occurs in nature, that you can have swarms of insect come and destroy a whole crop. So they have to load it with chemicals to get the insects away. They have to load it with herbicides to get the weeds away, because monocrops are by their nature so unnatural. So yeah, you just end up having this soup of chemicals that are required to be applied to even have a yield. And when you do get that yield, it's a nutrient deficient, chemical laden yield that just fucks humans up royally.
Well, and then so like even worse than that is like they're growing these GMO'd crops, these like specifically bred crops to be bigger, right? But then if people realize that the soil is being treated like this, whether like even without considering the pesticides and herbicides, just specifically with the fertilizer.
Okay.
If the soil isn't nutrient dense, then the crop isn't going to be nutrient dense.
Right.
Like people need to understand that, because Slim, like we just recorded another podcast like a couple of weeks ago. Like the spinach that you're buying at the grocery store has about 1/5 or 1/6 of the nutrient density as the spinach that our grandparents was eating.
Wow.
Like that should scare everybody. Like it should absolutely scare everybody, because that means, and that contributes to what you're talking about with like the hunger cravings. Like you could eat pounds of food right now, and you're not getting nearly enough, like as far as like what our parents were getting. And then like you consider how many extra calories we're getting, like along with that nutrient deficient food that we're consuming, then you understand why everybody's so freaking fat and unhealthy and like unhappy.
Yep. And a lot of these micronutrients,
they're the most important.
And they're required for all the enzymes and the catalysts for our body processes to actually happen. So as soon as our body processes the natural essential processes that happen, it's way too deep for even most people to be aware of. When those stop happening, the body stops functioning optimally and it breaks down.
Yep.
Right. And so you have someone that goes in with like this, like heart disease or some sort of disease that's common. And the doctor say, yep, the solution is this drug. It's not anything to do with the fact that you have no enzymes functioning because you're getting no nutrients. No. That has nothing to do with it. I'm not trained to say that. But if you take this drug, it'll help you feel less shitty for a certain period of time. Yeah, that's literally how we deal with this.
It's definitely not your poor health and your poor diet causing you to get poor sleep and all that other stuff.
Right. It's not those things. No way.
No.
It's just you're not taking this drug. That's the problem. Lack of this drug is the problem. Taking this drug is the solution. This is how dumb our system has become. It's embarrassing, actually.
Yeah.
Dude, we've already gone for an hour and 23 minutes. It's kind of hard to believe. Let's briefly talk about high time preference relationships, and then we'll find a time to schedule another conversation to continue this. Because,
let's do it.
It's funny. I think Tinder is the epitome of high time preference relationships, right? It's like, I want to do the least amount of work.
How more high time preference you can get than Tinder.
Yeah. Well, maybe porn is the most high time preference, right? Like I take my phone out of my pocket and I get the release. But this idea that, I want pleasure or sex now, instead of like, I need to take time to invest in a loving relationship that isn't easy, that it requires work. This whole idea that fiat high time preference has literally weaseled its way into relationships. And I think that is we didn't even get on this topic, but we talked about it on Twitter, this idea that the nuclear family, the structure, the unit of the family is like the core of a civilization and the core of health. And the fact that we've essentially adopted high time preference incentives from fiat into our relationships has essentially systematically destroyed the nuclear family, where now it's about like fleeting, instant gratification relationships, and no one is actually doing the work to engage in a true long-term relationship, let alone have a family, which is like the extrapolation of a long-term relationship. So, what's your take on high time preference relationships, what that means, what you're seeing, and do you think it's like a fiat derivative?
It's absolutely a fiat derivative, and like we could for whenever you want to do the next one, we could just really break this down ad nauseum, because the high time preference relationships is going to be an aspect of people don't know themselves, and people don't know themselves because of the fiat hamster wheel that they're stuck on. That's a very, very huge one. But at the same time, like the structure to a nuclear family, a successful nuclear family, if two people come together, they have to have the time, right, to be capable of hosting a nuclear family, as far as like having children and being meaningful parents and all this other stuff. But at the same time, they also have to have enough time to accrue resources to be able to support that the new life that they're going to be propagating.
Right.
And the fiat system doesn't allow that, because nobody has the average number of jobs for a 2-adult household is 2.3. Like that right there is a problem, because that means that at least one of those individuals has 2 jobs.
That's insane. And you compare that to the past, where, on one job, a family could live a moderate, meaningful life and be okay financially.
Because when you approach it from that point, then you understand why so many people are so depressed. Like then you start to really understand why so many children are growing up with problems so early on in their life. Like, if you don't have a meaningful family environment, if you don't have a healthy, meaningful family environment, you don't grow up with what I would argue are the proper philosophies to life, like the proper character traits, as far as like respect for your elders, like all these other dynamics. And it's just, I don't want to like take away too much of your time with it, because it's like we could go really, really, really deep on it. Because part of it is very much the philosophy of the individual, because if the individual doesn't know themselves very well, and if the individual doesn't know what they want, because you have to know yourself to know what you want ultimately. And if you don't know those two things, then you don't know who's going to be a good fit for you. If you don't know who's going to be a good fit for you, then you're going to hop from relationship for relationship. And then when you're doing that and you get into this high time preference, like mate selection, then it's just dopaminergic, just like all the other stuff we were talking about. Then you're not seeking real connection. You're seeking the high of like conquering somebody new, and you're seeking the high of experiencing somebody new. And like, there's a philosophy. I don't know if you listen to Chris Williamson that much. Modern Wisdom is his podcast.
Okay.
He brought up a thing in one of his other podcasts. I can't remember who he was talking to, but Andrew Huberman is like, so there's a saying where if you want to sleep with the same person for the rest of your life, have multiple sexual partners, because you're literally just going to experience the same, like you're going to have one type of experience over and over and over and over again. But if you have one specific sexual partner, because like none of us stay the same for the rest of our lives,
Right.
like based on what we knew and what we know and what we experience and what we experience and what we learn going forward, we're going to like evolve and change a little bit. Same with a partner. So that means that like if you have a partner for 10 to 20 years, the person that you're engaging in intimacy with 20 years down the road is not going to be the same person that you're engaging with intimacy today.
Right. That's interesting. So if you want to have a varied sexual intimate experience, have it with one person in a meaningful relationship,
and grow
and it
together.
will always be different.
Yeah, have one meaningful relationship and grow together.
That's very powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't even get into the health effects. You know, if you want, even if you, okay, say you get to a point, say you're an outlier, the Bitcoiner, you get to the point of being able to engage in a long-term low time preference relationship. You have the intention of creating a nuclear family. If you're eating shit food, you might not even be able to have a child. And this is like this weird
fertility rates are abysmal according to 50 years ago.
I mean, even BC, even before COVID, even before everyone jabbed themselves with things that crushed their fertility was a big problem, right?
Fertility, like before COVID, fertility was down 40 to 50% from 50 years ago. It's going down at a rate of an average rate of 1% per year.
Like if you know, the problem used to be I had a kid and I didn't want to, right? Now the problem, like you know, there's something messed up when people are like, I want to have a kid and I can't. The thing that used to be done by accident because it's so easy and healthy people do it so conveniently because that's what our machinery is designed to do, we can't even do anymore. And like,
well, and it's not that far-fetched if people like these examples we've laid out in this discussion today, like with the insulin, like the insulin response to fake sugars, like if like people take that example of how health complications within the body turn into a snowball effect and cause these cascades of other problems. It's not that hard to understand where if like a roundabout, generally poor, healthy lifestyle can result in something like fertility rates going down so bad. Because it like, if you have problems like with your diet and with your lifestyle and you're not changing them and you're not working to change them, like it's maybe not as soon as possible, but as like holistically and like as long-term as possible, like more problems just arise. Like with like a vehicle, for example, if you have one problem with your vehicle's operations, but it still works enough to drive it, if you don't get that solved, more problems are going to arise because you didn't solve that first problem. Like one problem is going to turn into 3, and then 3 is going to turn into 9.
Yes. And then the wheels fall off and then you're really screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool to riff on these things. I mean, maybe the next one we talk about how Bitcoin solves all these problems, because we kind of just, but I think it all starts with awareness, right? Like if someone's listening, if you're listening to this, thank you for getting to here. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful or informative. And maybe the next one we do, we can sort of rehash some of the topics we talked about and talk about what do we see going on in the Bitcoin space that is essentially solving, like we talked about the high time preference element of a lot of these problems. Let's talk about the low time preference possibilities that Bitcoin can introduce. And have it be more of have it part two will be a lot more less riffing on the craziness and shittiness of the world and more riffing on like, this is why we are in Bitcoin. This is how Bitcoin gives us hope. And, you know, I think just in times of radical chaos, there is an opportunity for radical imagination. And I think this idea that, you know, we can come up with these ideas of how we envision Bitcoin potentially solving these problems. It doesn't mean they're going to happen exactly as we say them, but I think in order to get somewhere, anytime we're trying to get somewhere, it always has to start with an idea. And I think we are in such times of radical disruption that it is actually the time to be creative and introduce some imagination, because we now have a tool we've never had before. So in fact, the future will be totally different than anything we can imagine from within the system, because we now have a radically different path that we can take. So
because
anything to say before we close out?
Yeah, definitely, because the people are gonna probably like, hopefully people don't take this as like we're just complaining the whole time, because the first step in solving a problem is identifying that there's a problem to begin with.
And
And
understanding it.
that's basically all we did. Like,
Yes.
that's all we did was identify all these different problems. Like you're saying, in the part 2, we can definitely go through how and why Bitcoin is the solution to all this. And we can specifically talk about why I keep mentioning in spaces and on Twitter is that people don't realize that Bitcoin is going to usher in the second renaissance.
Yes.
Like the real second, like the real renaissance. Because like the historical renaissance was, you know, way, way, way back. And it's like we're vastly overdue.
I agree. There'll be a renaissance in health. There'll be a renaissance in energy production, I think, in art and creativity. Like all the beautiful things of humanity that fiat has suppressed or killed are going to blossom out of the swamp when all the fiat stuff just dies and all decomposes. And from those decomposing nutrients, you're going to have these beautiful flowers emerge. And it's just going to be, dude, I'm here for it. This is like an exciting time to be alive. So thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing what you know. If people want to find you and look you up before the next one we do, where do they find you? And then, in the next one, we'll follow a similar trajectory in terms of what we talked about. And we'll take the flip side of how a low time preference world could look like in terms of how it can specifically solve these problems and the things and the initiatives that we're seeing and witnessing and, you know, things people are doing to actually take action. Because I think that's one of my favorite things about Bitcoiners is like, there's a lot of people in the world that complain. There's not a lot of people that are actually building shit to solve the problems, right? Like instead of whining ad nauseum about all the bullshit, identify the problem, because it must start with awareness. To solve it, you have to acknowledge there is a problem and have the mechanics of that problem to actually have a viable solution. And there's Bitcoiners building shit like Slim or like all of these people building tools, building communities, building networks. That's very exciting. We're in like the pre-inning of the first inning of this. So it'll be cool to do this. And then also like in a year or two, do it again and see like how have all these initiatives started to flourish. So let people know where they can find you. And then maybe in like a month or something like that, we'll do a round 2. And I'm excited
absolutely.
for it.
Yeah, no, Bitcoiners take action. That's the big thing that sets us apart. You guys can find me on Twitter at THEE, and then Mike Hobart. My last name's Hobart. And then for anybody that likes reading, you can follow me on Medium. It's just at Mike Hobart.
Powerful. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone listening. Hold on for a sec after I stop the recording so we can sign off. And for everyone listening, thanks for dropping by the Stoa. Once again, it's a community-funded platform, so you can either stream or boost sats through Fountain, or you can donate on-chain to the QR code on our homepage, bitcoinstoa.com. I think not taking advertisers ever is an important way to keep this like an authentic platform with the right incentives. And we kind of said before, even if we weren't recording this and putting it out, it would still be a conversation we're having. So thanks for hanging out, and we'll catch you next time.